Alrighty, so earlier today I talked about one Florida team in the Moving Forward series episode in Orlando City. Now we're going to talk about the other Florida team, that is Inter Miami, and unlike their interstate rival, this was nothing short of a miraculous season for Inter Miami, because coming into this season after just pretty much completely nuking this team and pretty much our start from scratch, and you could even say this is kind of like expansion season 2.0 for Inter Miami. Nobody expected this team to make it to the playoffs. In fact, if you would have told me after them being one of the last team to get their first win of the season back in May that this team would somehow make it to the playoffs, I would have think that you're absolutely crazy. But here we are at the end of the season. Not only they made it to the playoffs, but they kind of did it in I wouldn't say convincingly, because they did had to win some key games down the stretch with back against the wall, but the fact that they were able to win those games and able to clinch their spot before decision day is happened, I mean, that is definitely short of nothing miraculous. And that as I said before, this was easily the best season that Inter Miami has during their short 3-year existence in MLS. So in terms of the total record, they finished with 14-6-14 and finished with 48 points. They scored 47 goals, but allowing 56 goals. And again, a lot of those goals that they allow came in the beginning of the season, when not only this team cannot score, this team can't defend either, and they were shipping goals pretty much for fun. And their goal differential is -9. Now, what's interesting about all the stats I mentioned is that that's actually they actually have the identical goal difference, points total, and record as Orlando City. And I think the only reason why they're above Orlando City is because of the fact that they actually won by a bigger margin in the goal difference between those two teams playing against head-to-head, because I know both of these teams were able to get a win during the regular season matchup, but because Inter Miami won bigger in the win compared to Orlando City did, that's why I think that was the tiebreaker in terms of them jumping over Orlando City. So it was definitely a thin margin that Inter Miami has to jump over their interstate rival, but hey, they'll definitely take it with the way that they finished 6th in the Eastern Conference. But unfortunately, they did get eliminated by NYCFC in the first round in a matchup that was a classic example of what happened, where, as much as we have all these Cinderella run, and as much as we have all these teams that has that kind of team spirit that they can go for, when they do face against superior opposition, which that was the case with Inter Miami playing against NYCFC at that point, was the defending MLS champion, you knew that there was a chance that's where the storybook season comes to an end, and indeed it did. But in terms of the top goal scored, we got Gonzalo Higuain finishing off his final season in his career with 16 goals, followed by Leo Campana with 11 goals. Then you do get a little bit of a drop-off, because those were really the two main goal scorers for this Inter Miami team. You got Ariel Lassiter with 4 goals, Robert Taylor with 3 goals, and John Mota to round up the top 5 with 2 goals. Top assist leader, it's actually Bryce Duke that actually finished as the top assist leader for Inter Miami with 7 assists. And I think Bryce Duke, this is a great example of a player of decided to leave a club that clearly wasn't giving him a lot of minutes with LAFC, to join a club like Inter Miami that is willing to give these young guys like him more opportunity to shine. And that, yeah, I mean, we've seen this so many times with young players, and especially, despite the fact that you would think that young players would like to join big club or join clubs that have some success, that actually kind of sometimes could work against it, especially if they can't break into the starting 11. And again, it's pretty clear that during his short time with LAFC, Bryce Duke was nowhere near in terms of breaking into the LAFC team. In fact, if he was still an LAFC player, there was no way in the world he would have had any shots of getting into it. But even then, during his short time when I've seen him play, you can definitely see that there's a potential that he could definitely be a good number 8 in this league. And this season, he's definitely proven what a breakout season he has, and he's going to get even better as the season continue. Then, or not as the season continue, but as we head into next season. But after that, we got Alejandro Pozuelo with 6 assists. Just a reminder that Alejandro Pozuelo arrived with Inter Miami of only 150,000 GAM. I mean, if you talk about some of the biggest steal of the transfer market from last season, the Pozuelo trade that Inter Miami, of course, got has to go down as one of the biggest steal, and just another example of Chris Henderson working his magic and just kind of getting players that maybe started to kind of run its time with their former team, but coming to another club that has a change of scenery that can still provide the magic, as what we saw Pozuelo has done doing his time with TFC. And yeah, he definitely shown that in his short time, even with Inter Miami with 6 assists. Then you got Ariel Lasker with 5 assists, DeAndre Yedlin with 4 assists, and Gregory finished with 3 assists for Inter Miami. So what are some of the highlights for this Inter Miami team? Well, there was no doubt that Higuain carried this team on his back and to make the playoffs, and that, let's also not forget to mention that he became the comeback player of the year, even though I know some people would kind of criticize the fact that he didn't really kind of come back from anything other than mostly being benched for majority of the first half of the season. But yeah, the revival of Gonzalo Higuain in the second half of the season, and the fact that he just kind of turned back the clock with him scoring every single goals, is another example of something that I don't think anybody expected. Like, when Gonzalo Higuain was basically benched and was rotting there, while Leo Campana was just lighting it up and just incredible goal scoring form, everybody thought that Higuain was basically counting down the days that he was going to leave Inter Miami, or the fact that he was going to eventually announce his retirement. Now, eventually he did announce his retirement, but what we didn't think is the fact that he was going to announce his retirement on a bit of a whimper note, with the way that he wasn't getting a lot of minutes and scoring a lot of goals, and that, again, that cannot be anything further away from the truth. What a way for him to go out with the way that he's gonna try to make one last great run for this team, and even if it's not going to be an MLS Cup run, he's going to at least carry this team all the way to the playoffs, and he did exactly that in the latter part of the season. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the best regular season in club history. It's not even close compared to the disastrous class that they had in their first 2 seasons. And then, of course, the late season surge that they had making it to the playoffs. I mean, that Orlando City win that they had was their 3rd straight win, which is, I think, the first time that during last season that they reached 3 straight win, and they was just sizzling hot heading into the playoffs. And also, this is maybe kind of also why that, even though I said earlier with the way that they maybe had no shots against the defending champion, some people might say that, well, they're riding into the playoffs red hot, so when you are hot heading into the playoffs, there's a chance that you can maybe create a bit of an upset. And again, that was kind of the case with this Inter Miami team. They were definitely on a sizzling form, and again, it's kind of unfortunate that eventually that kind of good form didn't really quite carry into the playoffs, which that's kind of what we get to the lowlights of this team, and the fact that, again, there wasn't really a lot of lowlights other than what we saw in terms of the disastrous start to the season, where, again, this was a team that was one of the last teams to get their first win of the season. A lot of people was calling on Phil Neville's heads, and I wouldn't blame them, because Phil Neville coming into this season, probably a head coach that is on the hottest seat out of any head coach in the league. And that not only the fact that he has proven his doubter wrong, but now it seems like maybe he actually might be the right answer in terms of leading this team to glory. And that, I couldn't even believe that of course is something I just said. Consider I was also one of those critics for many times, thinking that this was not going to work from day one when Inter Miami decided to hire him. Higuain, of course, at least in the early part of the season, looked like he was going to end his career on a whimper. Again, with him just sitting on the bench and rotting there, it just didn't feel like he was going to get any more minutes. And that, again, it's kind of miraculous, the fact that when he was kind of giving a second chance with the way that Campana was starting to cool off, that he would ride on such a great form, as I mentioned in the highlights of this moving forward series episode. And then, of course, the late season run, again, kind of ended in a bit of a whimper. In the game against NYCFC, I was hoping Inter Miami would kind of show more fight in that one, but they kind of didn't. I mean, it was just a game where the quality really kind of shown that NYCFC have just way too much more quality and way much more experience in the playoffs compared to this Inter Miami team that just lacked that playoff experience. And again, at the end of the day, I don't care what anybody said. Playoffs is a different animal compared to the regular season. In the playoffs, we have seen the intensity kind of up to a point where you need to have those playoff experience if you want to of course do well in it. And that again, we have seen so many times where that could also be a difference where for a team that maybe have a miraculous run but have never made it to the playoffs compared to the team that has made the playoffs regularly and know what it takes to win. And that's already kind of stacking even more against with the way that, as I said, with Inter Miami, they were already going to be up against it with the way that they have to go on the road for their first ever playoff appearance. And it's not to mention against what at that point was the defending MLS Cup champion. Now, in terms of the MVP and revelation, I'm actually going to go with both Gonzalo Higuain and Leo Campana. And I know a lot of people would easily say what Higuain did in the latter part of the season is the reason why it carried this team into the playoffs, and that's of course not wrong. But I don't think a lot of people give enough credit of a great season that Leo Campana has had, and especially with the way that I think when Leo Campana really started to get the goal scoring form going. He was kind of one of the early part of the reason why this Inter Miami team started to turn things around in the middle of the season. And I would think that if he did not get on that good form like he did back in May and all the way into June and July, this Inter Miami team would have been still stuck in that bad run of form to start the season, and we would never talk about a team that would have even came anywhere close to being a playoff contender. So yeah, I think that's something that is kind of forgotten, but also just kind of me want to mention because again, while Gonzalo Higuain is going to get all the highlights and all the headlines about the fact that he carried the team to the playoffs, don't forget about Leo Campana is the reason why he was able to gather this team to a point where they looked like they were dead and buried, and this season was just going to be a complete disaster to a team that started to climb the table and get themselves back in the playoff conversation. Now, in terms of the disappointment for this Inter Miami team, I mean, there really wasn't a lot of disappointment because I really think most players on this team kind of not only play to their expectation, but even some were exceeding their expectation. But if there's one player I can easily pick out for Inter Miami that was a huge disappointment, it's Robbie Robinson. I mean, I hate the fact that I have to pick him as the disappointment because I feel like if I would have chose another disappointment, I would have maybe picked him in last year, although I think there was endless Inter Miami players that I could have easily picked as a disappointment. But yeah, Robbie Robinson clearly a disappointment, and just another example of an Inter Miami player that was brought in the first season that just basically failed spectacularly. And I think it's getting to a point where, just for Robbie Robinson, if he wants to rediscover or trying to get him fulfill his potential and able to really get himself to be the number 9 that maybe we thought that he could be when he was drafted number 1 by Inter Miami, he's got to go somewhere else. I feel like for him, he probably could follow the same route that Julian Carranza decided to join a much more well kind of work club, or a club that maybe is able to give him more minutes and thrive over that. Because from what we have seen with some of these Inter Miami outcasts like Julian Carranza and in some extent Lewis Morgan, they have thrived big way when they have joined another MLS club. And with the way that it seems like Inter Miami is decided that they're probably going to have Leo Campana as the future, alongside with the fact that they also have been rumored to get a number 9, and I mentioned in the news of the week episode, I think they were rumored to get that Brazilian striker in Maurizio in as one of their number 9. And also, not to mention, as I'll talk about in the moving forward part of this moving forward episode about Inter Miami, a certain guy from Atlanta United might be actually joining this team. It just feels like Robbie Robinson is going to go lower and lower in the striker depth chart, and it's just getting to a point where he's going to have to move on to somewhere. He need to have a much greener pass tree, because I don't think he's going to get a lot an opportunity, and that even then, I would say that that's going to be hard to come by because, again, for the first free season, he has suffered a major injury throughout his first free season. And when you're kind of an injury-prone kind of player like Robinson is, it's no wonder why this has really kind of ruined his early career. And that, again, the only thing that's good for him is that maybe he'll first try to stay healthy for the entire season, but also you need to find another club in terms of giving an opportunity to fulfill his potential that he might have when he was drafted #1 by Inter Miami a couple of years ago. Now, moving forward in terms of this Inter Miami team, so obviously I know anytime when we talk about Inter Miami in the offseason, everybody's always going to talk about the Messi to Miami kind of situation, and is Lionel Messi going to come to MLS? Is he finally going to come to Inter Miami? Is Beckham finally gets him? But I think the new transfer target that we really need to pay attention is Joseph Martinez. And, we talk about this before throughout this season, and even in my moving forward series about Atlanta United, the fact that what is going to happen with Joseph Martinez? Is he going to maybe stay with Atlanta United and pretty much play in his final year of his contract before moving on to somewhere else? Or the fact that he's going to be traded to another team? And again, a lot of the reason why Joseph Martinez hasn't been able to be traded to another team is that I'm pretty sure Atlanta is going to be demand a lot of money and a lot of GAM in order to do so. And in the case of Inter Miami, they don't really have a lot of GAM, especially the fact that people forget they're still on that sanction because of the rules that they broke of signing Matt Tweedy a couple of years ago. But there could be a possibility that they might use all of their GAM to try to get Joseph Martinez. And again, I know Joseph Martinez, he is a guy that, he hasn't really been the same that we saw when he came into the league. And, that devastating ACL injury that he suffered a couple of years might explain the fact that he hasn't really been the Joseph that we know in the early career that he was in his time with Atlanta United. But he's still a player that can score goals and could be that lethal goal scorer. And that, again, depending on whether or not if Phil Neville decided to go with a 2-striker system, which, I mean, he could do that. He could both put Campana and Martinez in. I mean, there was a couple of times that he did that with Higuain last season. This could be a possibility that, Joseph Martinez could be coming to Inter Miami. And he's not only coming to Inter Miami just to once again troll Orlando and becoming their daddy, but maybe just kind of piss Atlanta United fans and even I would say especially the front office. I don't think the fans would be that upset of him going to Inter Miami. I mean, he'll definitely get a standing ovation anytime when he comes back to Atlanta when Inter Miami face against Atlanta United. But this is definitely a power move to try to get the front office to say, hey, if we don't like each other, I'm gonna move on to a rival, and you're going to suffer the consequences. The other thing moving forward is that they're way ahead of schedule in terms of their rebuild. And while that, of course, is a good thing, the big question now is heading into the second season of this deep rebuild, can they continue to build on it? And it's not necessarily the fact that, they need to, of course, move on into the second round and make it they need to, of course, make it to the playoffs again, but it's not necessarily that they need to get to the second round, but they just need to show some progress. And we have seen before, when there's rebuilds that gone way ahead of schedule, it can sometimes be a bad thing, because the way that in the second year there might be some regression that could be shown in the rebuild that is ahead of schedule. And that's going to be the thing we're going to see with Inter Miami, whether or not if their rebuild is ahead of schedule, but maybe they'll suffer some regression heading into this upcoming year. The backline still need to be fixed. Again, I mentioned 56 goals that they conceded, definitely one of the highest in the East. And even though most of them came in the first part of the season, there was still time where this backline looked very lackluster. And also, if it wasn't for Drake Callender really turning on and becoming a very underrated goalkeeper in the latter part of the season, this team could have given up more than the 56 goals that they've conceded. And that is something that they definitely need to address in the offseason. Because when I look at this team, I think on the attack, they definitely have some good weapons up front with Campana and potentially Joseph Martinez there. The midfield also is shaping up be very decent too. But the back line is still kind of the Achilles heel, and is still kind of a point of focus that Inter Miami need to address if they want to be a regular playoff contender. And then of course the last thing moving forward for this team, what's going to happen with Alejandro Pozuelo. So I talked about how it was a steal that Inter Miami got with Pozuelo. Well, now it feels like I think they need to renew his contract, and that we don't know what's going to happen, whether if they are going to renew his contract, and especially with the way that, again, if they decided to sign Messi, yeah, I have a feeling most likely Pozuelo is not going to be there, because they need to open a DP spot. And therefore, I mean, they technically, I think, have one more DP spot open, now that, of course, Gonzalo Higuain no longer occupy that spot. But still, there's that big question with Pozuelo. If he is going to be moving on from another club, or the fact that he maybe could be bought down, because after the season, the way that he came to Miami and really performed, it's going to be very hard for Inter Miami fans to accept the fact that they're just going to let go of Pozuelo, unless of course they have decided to get the World Cup winner from Argentina, and definitely consider they're as many as the greatest of all time, known as Lionel Messi. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're an Inter Miami fan, what do you think was the highlights, the lowlights, the MVP revelation, disappointment, and moving forward, how is this team going to look for this upcoming season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.